of my strongest childhood memories is my first Broadway musical. When I was 5 years old, my parents took me to see The Wiz, and I still know the words to many of the songs. Um, Especially down here, where people have lived in the Lake Wales area for their whole lives, and their parents are from here, and this country way of life, I guess, if you want to call it, is, the ideal. I, like anybody else, I mean, the memories of my childhood are just as wonderful and important to me. I loved being able to go to museums, many family trips to the Museum of Natural History. Not sure what grade I was in, but I went to see Alvin Ailey Dance Company with my father's class. He was a teacher, and his school, or at least his class, they were going to see Alvin Ailey Dance Theater, and my dad thought it'd be a good idea for me to get to go, and it definitely was a very memorable experience in my life that led to me really loving modern dance. And I was very fortunate in that when I was at NYU, we went to see quite a few dance performances with my scholarship. So Alvin Ailey, Martha Graham, you name it, and it's really important to me. I love dance as an art form. I grew up when I was in high school, we lived in Staten Island, and a lot of kids from Staten Island and Brooklyn and Queens applied to NYU as sort of a safety school. At that time, it wasn't super competitive. They were in the process of, their goals at that point for the next 20 years was to build their endowment and to really build up their reputation as a good school. Kind of always taking second place to Columbia in New York. And so when I applied to NYU, I wasn't really thinking, oh yes, I will go there. My mother and I went the summer before my senior year in college. We went to NYU to have a tour, and it was just so, it just really made an impact on us. The video they showed us, the promotional video, very shiny, showing all the wonderful things. And probably the biggest impression for us was graduation at Washington Square Park. We were both like, oh yes, okay, I can see myself doing that. And as the application process went along, I was asked to come in for an interview for this scholarship program, which ended up being probably a huge reason that I did end up going there as opposed to a SUNY school. And it just really was just the best thing that could ever happen to me. It gave me a ton of money that wasn't loans, just basically a grant, and I was able to live on campus, and we went on one international and one domestic trip every year. We went to the theater probably once a week, and we would be able to get tickets for like $5. Probably the most I ever paid for something was $8. In 1988, that's when, people didn't really have computers at home yet, and there were these word processor things that were sort of a combination of a typewriter and a computer. And I had asked for one of those, and my father said, no, you should get a computer. Well, there were constantly disasters with this computer. The word processor we had was called Multimate Advantage. And basically, there was some kind of serious flaw with Multimate Advantage where pretty much whenever I would spell check the document, it just would explode the document, and it was horrible. So when I was a freshman, it had destroyed a document, and it was not due the next day. So I had a chance for, my father came. I had an older draft printed out. He came, and because I said, this is all your fault, this wouldn't have happened if I just had a word processor. And so he came in and typed as I read him my document. Okay, so in 1992, after I graduated from NYU, your dad and I moved to Florida, and it was an incredibly hard adjustment for me to go from New York City and the surrounding cities and suburbs to Panama City, Florida, a place which I had never even heard of. And I believe the first time the World Trade Center was attacked was only a couple of months after we got to Panama City. And it was so hard watching something happen to my home from so far away. And that was very upsetting. So it took many years. I got more and more used to Florida. There's a lot of things I enjoy about where we live now. It's very different from how I grew up. But there's a lot to like, and I think it's been a good place to raise our kids. In September of 2001, I was pregnant with my second child. Sam, you were 1.5. Were you 2 years old yet? You were 2 years old, and you used to come to work with me at your grandfather's house. And one day we were driving the back way through Frostproof, and CBS used to simulcast on one of the FM stations, and I was listening to it, and it was right at the end, and Brian Gumbel interrupted the wrap-up to say that something had happened to one of the Twin Towers, and it seemed like a plane had crashed, and they didn't know if it was a private plane, and somebody called who lived in Lower Manhattan and was explaining what she had seen. And as he was speaking to her, the second plane came and struck the other building. And it was a very frightening moment because you just, this was not an accident. This was not two small private planes, accidentally crashing. This was something premeditated. So I got to Grandpa Arthur's house, and we put on the television. It's really surreal. And I know that everybody in the United States kind of felt like they were being attacked as well, but and maybe it's silly to feel selfish or wanting to have a claim on New York in a situation like this, but I do think, having been there, having grown up there, that it's all the more frightening and upsetting. When I was 18, my grandparents took me to eat at Windows on the World, which is the restaurant at the top of the Twin Towers. That's a funny thing. In New York, people always call it the Twin Towers, and on television, suddenly everybody was calling it the World Trade Center, which incorporated more than just the two towers. There are other buildings as well. So for much of the day at work, I had the TV on and was watching, and then at some point, showing this building falling down again and again. I couldn't take it anymore, and I eventually put on Sesame Street or something for Sam to watch. It was just, how could this even be real? And actually, my dad was flying to California that day, and when they closed the national airspace and landed in Dallas, nobody on the plane had any idea why. And so he called the office and he said, "They just closed national airspace and we've landed in Dallas, and what is going on?" And I said, "The Twin Towers just collapsed in a terrorist attack," and he couldn't even you know, how can you fathom that? So that was a hard week, and still think about it a lot. It's very, I mean, I think most of America feels the same way, but it's just crazy to think that a place that you have taken the subway to, a place that you've gone up to the observation deck, a place where you've had dinner on more than one occasion, is just gone, vanished into thin air.
My first Beatles album, I remember my dad giving me Abbey Road. Before that, though, I was into the Monkees. I remember just looking at the Monkees albums and enjoying, wanting to be a monkey. First concert I went to was Blue Oyster Cult. Enjoyed the, enjoyed the laser show. Vinyl, yeah. Nice crisp albums. When I was, I guess 5 or 6, my friend, he was a little bit older, maybe he was 8, and he and I kind of had a lot of 45s, and we set up a little thing down in the tool shed at my house where we had, we would play records for people, and we tried to get people to come in from the street to listen to records for 5 cents maybe, I don't remember. I don't think too many people came in, but my mom, my dad, I think, and some of our friends came in, and we played music for them. I was a pretty big Beatles fan when I was 5, 6, 7, and I think it was probably 7 years old. 70 they broke up, or 69, I can't remember, but I do remember when they broke up and was quite, upset about it. I used to love the Beatles. I still do, and so yeah, I remember that. But shortly after, they still played different music, and they went on. So my dad was worked in advertising. He was, I guess, what you call a madman. He started working in advertising in the 50s, and worked for Young and Rubicam in New York City. He commuted for almost more than 30 years, I guess, to New York City on the train. And I remember, actually before he left New York and we moved to Michigan, and I remember a time when he and one of his coworkers spent a weekend at our house in the basement, trying to come up with commercials for, I think it was car commercials, because that's when Detroit, that's where he worked at, did car commercials. And so they spent a whole time down there doing that. And I think they were able to come up with the account, I can't remember, but he used to do commercials for Eastern Airlines, Dr. Pepper. Was a big account they had, and I went to see Dr. Pepper, a commercial being shot. It was kind of cool. Pretty neat seeing all that. Anyways, yeah, he did a lot. Great Gull Island was a research facility. I spent some time there doing my master's thesis. Besides researching the terns, which are seabirds, I met Sam's mother, my wife, there. So that's a story to itself, I guess. But anyways, as far as the research goes, the island was, we were, on this 28-acre island, and basically the terns lived on about 26 acres of it, and we lived in the middle of it all. So every day we woke up and we're in the terns world. I remember one specific time, it was pretty crazy. It was really foggy, and all of a sudden a helicopter landed on the island. Apparently it was so foggy the helicopter was having trouble navigating and decided he had to land on the island. The terns just went crazy, flew all over the place, and we were all wondering what was going on. But fortunately, two people in the helicopter were okay, and they eventually took off. And anyways, that's my one remembrance of Great Gull Island.